Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Don't let your contact center be the black sheep of your bank's innovation. My name is Julie Moon, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so. You may have previously seen that Mike Strahan was going to be leading the discussion today. We actually had a last-minute schedule change, so today I'm thrilled to be joined by Valor Svanson, Global Strategist, Contact Center, CX and EX Consulting at Lifesize. Valor, welcome.
Hey, welcome, and thank you for having me. And yes, I feel really lucky to be able to be the one that was chosen to present today, so I'm looking forward to discussing the topic with the audience.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we're so glad you're here. Well, before we kick off, I do have a couple of housekeeping items before I hand over the reins to you real quick. First off, to our audience, please note that this is happening live, and we will be running a couple of polls throughout the presentation, so be sure to keep an eye out for those. And when you see those, feel free to submit your thoughts and opinions in the polls, and we'll be discussing those throughout. Also, if you have any questions for Valor, you can enter those in the Q&A section, and Valor will address those at the end of the session. And if for some reason we aren't able to answer your question or don't have time to answer your question, someone from Lifesize will certainly follow up and make sure that your questions are answered. So feel free to submit those. Also, if you want to re-watch this content, any portion of it on demand, there will be a link for the on-demand webinar that will be emailed out tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. With that, I'll go ahead and hand things over to Valor. Take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. So, yes, so Valor Svanson, I'm working with Lifesize now, and we are a UC, VC, and CCAS company that's been in the market for quite a while now, and recently our expertise has expanded in the fact that Strahan was acquired by Lifesize of recent, and that has really allowed us to get into the CCAS market a lot deeper and wider than we have before. My background is basically I've been one of you guys for the most part. I spent 20 years in the U.S. on the customer side of things, literally starting on the phones. Back in the early 90s when there was tape recorders used to record our quality, all the way up to managing 21 contact centers for Comcast and having a sizable P&L. And that was responsible for purchasing all these different technologies, putting into place all these different processes, and making sure that the human capital was managed or the engagement with the employees was happening in a manner that was best for the company and for the customers. And then I came over to the UK about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, to do all things consulting as it relates to people, process, and technology when it comes to contact centers in this market. And I've been quite intrigued with the advent of the emerging technologies such as AI, robotic process automation, and contact analytics. And so I've really got a kind of an angle here where I am always on the advocate of the contact center director, the advocate of the CCO, the chief customer officer, versus the person who is coming in kind of consulting on telling them what they need to do, because I really understand what their challenges are. And so in the last 10 years that I've been doing consulting here in the UK and globally, I've come across quite a few insurance companies and banks and other financial institutions, and seeing firsthand behind the scenes what's happening in these contact centers. And that's kind of the topic of our discussion today is don't let the contact center be the black sheep of kind of like the family of your digital transformation. I've been in situations where I literally this is recently now, where we have a bank that I was visiting, and they actually had it looked like a green screen, but the font was actually blue. And so I asked them, I said, what's going on with this blue font here on your screen? They're like, well, it was the green screen. It was it's our old CRM system, and we just can't get rid of it because it's so secure. So they decided to make the font blue, so it looked like they upgraded it. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. But as far as the management team there was concerned, they really were concerned about security and stability and wanted to make sure nothing broke and didn't want to take any risks. So I can certainly understand that with a financial institution, why that is critical. So I look at these things from from a practitioner standpoint, from a person who's having to take these things. How do I operationalize them? How do I get the net benefit from them? How do I make sure that the agents are utilizing them to the fullest extent? And at the end of the day, how does the customer actually get the best of all of that, and that's a good customer experience? So before we go on, Julie, would you like to help me here with a little bit of a poll so we can kind of see how folks are in their current state?
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's move it over to the poll here. So to our audience, feel free to submit your answer now. I'll read out the poll question here. Is a cloud contact center solution something your organization is contemplating? The first answer is fully in the cloud already, so we're already there. Partially in the cloud, so maybe you have part of your organization in the cloud. You plan to migrate in the next 12 months. You've thought about it, but you haven't pulled the trigger, or no, we're staying on-prem. So feel free to submit your answers there, and we'll take a look at the answers here soon. But I wanted to hand this over and get your thoughts, Viller, because I know that there are a lot of security implications here. So maybe you could kind of bring that up while people are answering briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. So because about 58% of all of the companies that were questioned by a company called Nematrix, there was a study done, 58.8% of the companies surveyed were doing transformation, CX transformation, basically utilizing cloud technology as is the core and central component of their transformation. That means that, as you guys know, that a lot of the security issues have been, basically the bugs have been taken out. We're not in a situation now where this is something in the future. It's not we'll wait till all of the issues are taken care of. There are all kinds of certifications that are out there that have already been met by these various cloud providers. So this is something that you can certainly question them on, and they'll be able to provide the answers to make sure that you feel confident that this is occurring in a manner that allows you to feel that your systems are secure. Okay, let's see what the poll results are. Are we good? You think that's enough time, Julie?
Yeah. Hopefully everybody has had the opportunity to answer. If not, feel free to keep answering. Okay, so looking at the results here now, it looks like the majority of the audience said that they're partially in the cloud. So 1 foot in, 1 foot out, perhaps. 10% said, no, we're staying on premise, and 10% said fully in the cloud. And then second highest was, we thought about it, but we didn't pull the trigger. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Viller, because I know that what you were saying before, it's like we're already here. So the cloud, it does seem like you hear it and you think about, oh, maybe that's something that's in the future. It's something we could put in our 5-year plan. But like you were saying, it is already here. So it makes sense that the majority are partially in the cloud.
Exactly, and I want to really kind of shift the focus here of this discussion. It's not necessarily that we're trying to push that the cloud is the solution. It's what you can do in the cloud. We're kind of beyond this discussion of should I go to the cloud? If you're going to be competitive in the market, then the cloud is where everything is going to be. And I believe it's Gartner. I can't remember if it's Gartner or Forrester, but one of them they're not going to be reporting on any on-premise solutions going into 2021. So you're not even going to be able to even get reviews for on-premise technology going forward, or as we call it in the industry, TIN. So quite interesting here that this is the mix. But so let's go on to the next slide here. And so here are some general fintech trends, and I'm not going to read them all out to you, but you're obviously rethinking customer journeys. You're using omni-channel to replace physical interactions, so that the customer doesn't necessarily have to come into the bricks and mortars that were out there. Using data to get actionable insight on the customer, so forth and so on. And what I'm finding is that, and this is very interesting. I'll use another example of an insurance company that I was working with in the past, is that there's a lot of money that gets poured into the IT department for the transformation, the digital transformation. We're gonna do this big thing. And then it's kind of like the contact center is kind of like, okay, well, guys, we'll get to you, because our goal is to remove the calls coming into the contact center, so that you guys, we can kind of like shrink the size of this very, heavy burden on the business, because as you know, the contact center can be anywhere between 60 to 80% of the payroll cost for any business. So there's this huge emphasis to say, okay, we're gonna do the digital transformation and make sure the customer can do everything via their iPhone, everything via their Samsung phone or whatever phone they might have, or actually be able to do it online. Now, the problem is that if you're not doing things in alignment with what's happening or what your contact center is saying, it could technically blow up in your face. And so there was an example a couple of years ago. I was working with a large insurer in the Midlands here in the UK, and they said the IT department was told, the edict from the MD was like, listen, we want 70% of all our contacts to come through a digital channel, and we want all those contacts to be shown that the success of this is through the reduction of the contacts coming into the contact center. And because the contact center and the IT department were in lockstep as to the customer journeys, what the customers were trying to do, it actually increased the contact volume by 120%. I mean, in other words, it was a 20% increase, 20-point increase on the contact volume than they normally would have had in the same period the year before, once they turned on their digital journeys that they thought they had all mastered. So it's really important that that you consider the opportunities to innovate in the contact center. And it was less than a year ago that I was with this bank where the agents were using 8 different screens to support the customer, 8 different screens. And you would think, again, that a bank would be able to leverage all the digital money that's set aside for the transformation, digital transformation, to actually happen in the contact center as well. So there's opportunities here to deliver interwoven channel communication when your customers need it the most. Now, I just did a webinar or live stream was yesterday, and it was about interchannel. And so it was talking about the evolution from single channel to multi-channel to omni-channel. And what happens after that? Well, after that, we have this phenomenon called interchannel, which is something we're coining here at Lifesize. Another way of calling it is channel-less. So what that means is if a customer comes in, for example, through a chat, and then they get the person talks to them in the chat, or the chatbot links them to an FAQ, and then that FAQ, for example, doesn't necessarily do the trick. Then within that FAQ, they can click and go back into a chat and talk to a live agent through chatting. And then that agent is trying to help them maybe try to understand where they need to sign some paperwork, or how do they, set up their bank account and where on the screen because they can't see it, what they need to click on, so forth and so on. And then the final leg of that journey is that the customer can then get a link from the agent that's in the chat to have a live agent call them via video, for example, to take them through and do some screen sharing. Now, the point of that interchannel or channel-less contact there is that the customer is trying to get to an end state, which is like, how do I navigate this website so I can, finish my mortgage or whatever it might be, and how can I share this experience with the agent on the other end through potentially video or potentially screen sharing so that I can get to the result. And all of this happens within one contact. They're not channel hopping. They're not, for example, they're not going into a chat and having to hang up and then make a call and then having to hang up and check the FAQ. It's all happening within one continuous experience. As far as leveraging chatbots, AI, and applications such as that, there's all kinds of opportunities for these different tools to be able to pull in information so the customer obviously can do the transactional calls without having to talk to the agent. But at the same time, we want to be able to leverage the AI and chatbots. They'll also be able to deliver the information about the customer and the journeys that they've been on to the agent, so the agent knows some of the challenges that the customers had with trying to get to the end result that they're trying to accomplish. Video. So video is not necessarily the mainstream right now. It's for example, I think about 4 to 6% of the contact centers globally are using it as a core channel. But it is the way that things are going. I mean, if you think about it, your kids, my kids, even myself, it is now the norm for me to call somebody via video. I'm surprised this doesn't have video, but almost every single call that I'm having right now, I'm having these meetings via video. And so the consumer themselves are communicating via video, and you've got a generation of folks that are coming up to their teens and into their 20s and early 30s that have done nothing but video, and they're going to expect to be able to have that as an option to be able to communicate with the agent. The other component there as well with video is, especially in this environment of COVID and how things have changed, it is so important that we see each other when it is time to see each other, when things are in a situation where it's very emotive or very complex. We were looking at a study for one of the webinars that we did before, and we found that there was literally 7,000 facial expressions that a person can make when they're talking to you. 7,000. I mean, who would have thought that there was 7,000? And this goes way beyond just the body language that's happening. So there's a huge opportunity to use video to build trust, to build that emotional connection that you have with your customer that your competitor doesn't do, or isn't going to do, or hasn't done. So that's a key bit right there. The other thing is a modern intelligent routing. So this is key as well. There's AI out there that can tell if the customer's called in once or twice or 3 times, or that they've been bounced around, or they haven't gotten to their answer they're trying to get to. And so because of that, there's technology out there within the cloud, umbrella, that allows the customer to go to the right agent based on what's happening with the call, and including analytics that show that, for example, the sentiment of the call, the last time the customer called was not that good, but then we have this agent over here based on their analytics on how they support the customer. They are the best ones suited for talking to that customer so that they can diffuse the situation so that these two personalities can come together and actually have a good connection in the end. And of course, cloud offers a lot more flexibility in being able to scale, being able to go up and down with seasonal aspects of the different markets that are out there, not just fintech, but also in retail and the seasons that we're having. Christmas coming up, how do you add another 10-15% capacity to your contact center? And it's almost impossible to do that. I wouldn't say impossible, but it's almost impossible to do that when you have yourself a situation where you're doing purely on-prem and you're kind of having to do, and we always kind of joke about this, duct tape and chicken wire your contact center together so that you got everybody connected via, for example, additional licensing for those sites. So you've got a situation where you've got one office, but now because you've got everybody working remotely, you might have 500 offices out there. So how do you manage 500 different offices so they're all having the same experience and interface with the customer, and same security, same measures, and same ability to interact with them with on-prem? And you just pretty much you can't do that with the same flexibility that you can with cloud. So this is where I'm basically going to summarize the fact that absolutely you cannot improve your overall CX if your contact center is stuck with old tech. Because, for example, let me give you an example here. So you got a situation where I'm on my app and I'm trying to solve my problem of getting a loan, or I'm trying to see what happened with my balance and why was this charge on there, so forth and so on. Or I'm in the IVR and it's a voice response IVR and it's an AI empowered and it's all kinds of cool gadgetry going on there. But if you think about it, if the agent is not empowered with the same amount of technology or the same amount of information that you're using to support these apps, then the customer is going to get a very different experience once they talk to the agent, because they're fumbling around these different systems, they're trying to find information, they're trying to understand where the customer was coming from, what was their journey to this point, and how can they help them. So you might have an IT department that is, they are shining quite bright with their digital transformation program, but then the contact center is kind of getting the kind of dirty end of the stick here because they're not getting all of the love and care that the IT department did with their digital transformation budget. The other thing to think about as well is, say for example, you have a stellar digital transformation program. It's absolutely, yes, it's capturing all these transactional calls. In fact, with the AI and the chatbots, we're actually getting a little bit more complex in our ability to support the customer's needs. Now, put yourself in the agent's shoes. The agent now, in the old days, used to take maybe 7, 6, 5 calls an hour, and those calls might have been, for example, how do I check my balance, or the claims process, how does that work? Where is my claim, and what's going on with that? So depending on the circumstances, typically an agent would have maybe 3, 6, decent calls that are pretty, low intensity, not that complex, pretty easy calls, password changes, the real easy stuff. But then maybe one or two calls that were pretty complex or very emotive. But as the advent of these additional technologies come into the cloud that you're using, and God bless the cloud that you can put in there quite easily and with full flexibility and scalability, what's left over is that the agent is getting calls. Think about it, getting calls that the technology could not handle. So all of a sudden, your agent is going from 2 or 3 calls that were quite complex to 7, 5, 6. In fact, every call of the hour is very complex or very emotive. So we have to focus on making sure that the tech is also supporting the agents as well. Okay, so before COVID, believe it or not, this is kind of actually weird looking back at this. 80% of contact center agents or more were still on premise. 80%. In fact, I think it was February of last year. There was a statistic. 94% of all call center directors before February of last year had never worked a remote contact center scenario as we have in today's society, so to speak. And so, if you're at a cocktail party and you're with your peers there, only 6 of those folks in that meeting would have said that they actually had the opportunity to work this scenario and be able to do it with vigor and do it with an understanding what the best practices are. So we've been challenged and fast-tracked into this environment where you have to work remotely, and on-prem does not support that. There was always an ability to get another agent to come into the office. You could get your training program going, get everybody in there, and go from 6 weeks to 4 weeks to get them onto the floor. The volumes were very predictable and consistent, and now they're quite unpredictable and consistent, and they're very inconsistent. And the existing data, obviously, in security compliance was good enough. And so the point here is that the risks of change outweigh the benefits of going to the cloud, and that's why things kind of didn't move in the past, whereas now we've kind of had to move. So the primary fears from some of the studies that we've done is really, and this is kind of hits home to kind of at the emotional level actually, and it's if you kind of think about it and you peel back all of the the kind of logic and go into the source of these changes. You've got potentially the loss of control, change in workflows, basically the unknown, disruption to the agents. How are we going to train them? How are we going to care for them? As you pointed out earlier, is there sufficient security out there? And, what happens to customer churn? If we disrupt the situation that they're currently in. And then, of course, costs. And the reality is that the cost does go down, and the customer churn actually is going to be addressed with more positive results because of all the analytics that you can infuse into your cloud environment, predictive analytics, sentiment analytics, as well as agent analytics, so speech analytics, contact analytics, and such. So here it is, COVID, all kinds of call volume spikes. People have to work from home. Potential reduction in revenue occurred for many of us out there, especially the retailers, just absolutely crazy, and just general uncertainty. So the situation here is that we can't continue to kind of think that if we just kind of, stick our heads in the sand, that we can continue on as we have in the past. Because at this stage, going to the cloud literally is going to be a competitive advantage than if you don't go to the cloud. So you don't want to be in a situation where in 2022, I think it's over 60% of the companies out there are going to be moving in that direction. And so you want to start now with, how do you, go in that direction? What do you do? And the thing is, it does not have to be an all or nothing type scenario. We've got a situation where when you're in the cloud, you're engaging with your client in new mediums. You're able to have all-encompass, one pane of glass potentially, all of the systems right there for your agent to be able to work through so that they're not having to struggle with different screens and different systems. It's all baked into one cloud solution. Because all the data is connected to APIs to your other systems in your business, you can get real-time data, customer data. It's a much more efficient with unpredictable volumes because your ability to scale up, scale down. Your agents can be pulled from anywhere in the globe. It doesn't matter. It does not matter at all where they might be located. You know, for example, if you need to pull some folks from Scotland, or some folks from New Zealand, or some folks from California, right there, you've got, you know, follow the sun type of scenario, because the agents can be anywhere. And traditionally in the past, the whole premise of work from home agents was that they were more mature. They were an older demographic, and they were more prone to have less attrition, because of the nature of the fact that they like to work from home. So you can still tap into that. It's just not going to be the young folks solely like we more normally find in the contact centers, with them ranging on average about age 27 to 28 years old. So you're going to have a much wider demographic to be able to pull from, to be able to tap into the benefits of having that flexibility. And then, of course, there's all kinds of flexible cost models, because most of these are subscription-based services. So if you go basically get yourself in a situation with one of these cloud providers, and some of them can be up and running literally, and I kid you not, literally in 2 hours. It has been done. It can be done. But of course, it takes on average about 6 weeks or so to get everything, all the bugs worked out as far as training and making sure everybody is on the same path when it comes to utilizing the new system. But it does future-proof your compliance and security, because it's all upgraded across the board, updated and upgraded at one time. There's, you know, all these microservices and all these plugins, PCI compliance. All of this is all going to be sorted for you without having to work through different systems, patching them in, because the cloud, again, is all unified. It's all together. There really should be no reason right now to not do it. In fact, the benefits of cloud now outweigh the risks of not doing it. And it literally will become something that is going to be a competitive disadvantage if you don't move yourself to the cloud at some point. So let's have another survey. Julie, what do we got here?
Yeah, all right. So moving on to this second poll question, feel free to submit your answers. Let's go through it here. Is your contact center keeping up with your company's other digital transformation efforts? You can either be far behind, at about the same pace, ahead, or far ahead. Now this is interesting. Let's see. I know that digital transformation has been a huge topic for 2020. Obviously, a lot of organizations have shifted their focus or to focus on their digital transformation across the board. So it'll be interesting to see where the contact center in specific kind of tracks along with the rest of the digital transformation.
Absolutely. I remember when I was running my contact center in the U.S., you know, I had 21 sites, and every single year I was told by the president of Southern Division was, Valor, you're going to have to reduce your budget next year by 10%. I'm like, okay, but I was just in the meeting with marketing, and I understand we're growing by 10% next year. He's like, yeah, that's right. Go figure it out.
Yeah.
Why are they getting more money, but we're getting less money? We're supposed to handle a wider batch of customers. So we tend to be the redheaded stepchild. We tend to sit at the kiddie table during Christmas dinners, the call center folks. But, you know, nowadays the contact center is the strategic hub of the business. And I'll talk a little bit more about that once we get some of these poll responses. So why don't we see how everybody's doing?
Okay.
We'll click on that. Yeah. Think we have enough time, Julie? Are we okay?
Yeah, I'd say so. Hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to submit their answer. Let's take a look.
Okay, here we go. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, no, you poor guys. Oh, no. No, as predicted, black sheep. So yes, I feel for you guys. I totally feel for you guys. So believe it or not, there are all kinds of business cases out there that can be done that we can help you guys with that demonstrate that there is a huge increase in net. What I had to do back in the day was, Valor, how are you contributing to percent profit growth? Valor, how are you contributing to percent profit growth year over year running these 21 sites? Well, one of them was I had to reduce them down to 17 sites. So of course, closing some contact centers was key. But at the same time, you know, there was a 33% increase in the subscriber base for the customers that I was supporting, whilst the contact center budget went down by nearly almost 22%, 23%. And all of this was done through innovation, through technology. And so cloud right now is the technology du jour. And the beauty of the technology right now with cloud is that you can actually put in all types of cool things such as analytics, sentiment analysis, and predictive analytics, as well as the AI in the chatbots and the IVR, so forth and so on. So let me give you guys just a quick statistic here. So, for example, analytics, right? Typically, you'd have to go to a separate vendor to get, for example, speech analytics or contact analytics. You'd have to go to a separate vendor to get sentiment analysis through the speech to text to understand, what is it that the customer's feeling after the call, so forth and so on. And typically, you'd have to go to a separate vendor to get predictive analytics. Now, these are hard and fast numbers that have come from Nimitris. I can never pronounce their name correctly, but Nimitris surveys that they've done. And they've found that if you have sentiment analysis, within your cloud environment, that there is a 90% increase in revenue, 90%. So imagine if you go back to your stakeholders, the guy in the corner office there, the MD, the guy with the money, the chief financial officer, and you say, listen, what if I could tell you if we went to cloud, and we're in sales, and by using sentiment analysis, I think we can increase our revenues by 90% because we understand what the customer's mood is, how they felt after a certain type of sale. So how do we change the way that the call goes? And again, this is quite flexible in the cloud. You just can't do that when it's on-prem. As far as agent analytics, contact analytics of the agent themselves, giving them feedback from speech analytics or chat analytics on how they could have handled the call better and where they could have improved emphasizing this or that or been compliant. 52% increase in revenue when you use agent analytics. And then predictive analytics showed a 35% increase in revenues. As far as customer ratings, sentiment analysis showed a 75% increase in the customer ratings, 69% increase using predictive analytics, and 51% increase using agent analytics. Now, customer ratings obviously is what gives you your edge. Your customer satisfaction, the customer experience is critical for you to be able to grow in these times. Now, if you've got customers on hold and they're your agents are at home and you don't have the flexibility to scale up and scale down, and like for example, me, I called my bank. I think it was when was it? It was August, July, August. I was literally on hold for 2 hours. And the reason I was on hold for 2 hours was, one, because I'm a contact center consultant, and I was like, I'm not going to hang up. I'm going to see what's going on here. So I stayed on the phone. I finally got through to the agent, and at that point, I didn't, make a big ruckus about it. I said, hey, what's going on? What's happening? How is it? Are you working from home? And they said, yes, they're working from home, and they're challenged in the fact that they can't seem to be able to get a unified view on the productivity of her fellow agents because of the systems that they were using. So basically what they had done is they had taken their on-prem technologies and just added more licenses and plugged in and somehow plumbed these agents into the system that they were currently having. So they really didn't have a good opportunity to manage the productivity and the presence of the agents as they should. And here's the kind of like the scary part of this thing is, I said, well, how does that feel? What's going on? And she said that, well, what's interesting is that when the customer comes in after being on hold for an hour or two, and they're pretty tenacious, these customers, that it's the rude ones, the ones that really don't care what your life's about. They don't care that you're working from home and you got a kid in the background or you're trying to keep your pet, cat quiet or whatever it is so that you can have a professional call. And then they start to attack the person. And she said, and I'll never forget this, she said that it felt like an intrusion in your home because of the fact that this person is really giving you a hard time in your home. And she said she felt violated. And I thought about the bigger picture here is because this particular bank hadn't taken the time to invest in a cloud solution that allowed them to manage the wider staff in a way that would balance and be able to scale so that you could handle the contact volumes that they were receiving and be able to manage it correctly. Not only that, the questions that I asked were related to, how are you interacting with your coworkers? And because cloud technology allows you to infuse gamification, video, and all of these other components, so that the agent themselves feel like they're part of a wider team. And, we all got that kind of tribe mentality. We all want to be part of something bigger. And you don't want to be this lonely island by yourself out there, trying to slog along, getting yelled at call after call after call, because the digital transformation took care of everything else, and the call center transformation is kind of running behind the rest of the team. But I could go on and on and on this, but so we're going to kind of close it out for some questions and some dialogue here. So just want to, obviously, shameless plug here for our platform, CX Engage, and I've been in the industry now 30 years, 20 years on the customer side and 10 years here on the vendor consulting side of things, and I really suggest to take a look at our platform. I personally, having been a person who had to buy this stuff, I'm quite impressed with this platform, and I've only been with Lifesize for about 4 months now, and I'm blown away with the core focus of it being about making sure that the agent effort is reduced. That seems to be the core tenet of the entire platform. So that, of course, is within the cloud technology, so that allows you to engage rapidly, and, of course, engage anywhere. And again, this goes for any cloud technology out there. And, of course, engage with confidence. So that kind of wraps up the webinar today as far as me presenting. Now, we'd be glad to be open it up to some questions here and hopefully be able to support some additional insights that you guys might have as well.
Great. So just a quick reminder to our audience, if you do have questions, feel free to submit those in the Q&A box there, and we'll get to those. But let's start off with the first question. First off, how does the agent experience impacted, sorry, I think the grammar might be off on this one. How does the agent experience impacted by being in the cloud?
Well, so how's the agent experience being impacted by being in the cloud?
Oh, being impacted. Well, there we go. Being impacted. There.
I think that's what's happening here, and that's the agent experience. I believe, in fact, not believe, I know, is that when you have all your agents on one platform, they're all experiencing the same performance metrics. They get to see the same scorecards. They get to see the same CSAT results that all the other agents are receiving. But I think what's most important is about load balancing, because when the agent is in the cloud, you're able to. There's a much greater degree of control on how do I route calls, where do the calls go. Do I now plug something into the IVR immediately that allows the customer to understand what's happening with something being down or we're having an issue with the app. All of this happens real time. So basically, the agent experience one is for them working remotely, for the most part, is that we're trying to mimic a consistent, cohesive, well-balanced environment that they would normally have in the contact center with an on-prem solution. So yes, it's for the better, believe me.
Okay, let's look at the next. Let's take a look at the next question here is, what happens with cost when you have UCCC from the cloud provider? Okay,
so again, Dimitris, and again, pardon me for pronouncing their name wrong, but they did a survey on this, and they found that this is the exact issue here, and they found that there's about a 17% increase in satisfaction, by the way, with the provider who can do both UC and CC services and solutions. But there was a 22% reduction in overall cost of the technologies. So your overall budget goes down when you are combining both your unified communications platform for your business as well as your contact center platform for the business into one single cloud network. The other benefit as well is that you have knowledge workers that might not necessarily be on the phone. So you've got, and I hate to say it, Johnny in accounting. Hey Johnny, we're having a spike here in call volume. please just all of a sudden click here, and all of a sudden you have everything that the agent has at their disposal to be able to take calls between, 12 and 2, as well as some of the other professionals in the business. They're all linked into the cloud network so everybody can do a hands-on when necessary. And that offloads some of these, hold times that these folks, myself, you guys are experiencing, as well as it exposes the wider business to the challenges that some of these agents are having, so that they have more empathy and understanding of what your call center is going through, your contact center is going through. I see there's another question here, a good one. What is the best way to convince upper management to invest more in contact center innovation? Okay, so this one right here actually is a good one, because when you do cloud, you don't have to, it's not all or nothing. You don't just say, okay, in 4 months from now, we're just going to push this button and all of a sudden we are in the cloud. Typically what happens, because just the sheer nature of the cloud technology, you could literally start with 12 agents in a corner, or 12 agents that are dispersed working from home, and have them go onto the cloud network. You work with your cloud provider. You say, okay, here are our workflows. Here's what the customers need to know. Here's what our agents need to know. Here are the systems that you need to connect to. We're using Zendesk. We want Zendesk to be like the front end, or whatever whatever CRM you're using. And how does the cloud network sit behind it, or how does the cloud network sit in front of it? And start with 5 agents, 10 agents. See how it works. Give it a go. I mean, challenge one of these CCaaS providers. Say, it's all on your website that you're going to be up and running in 2 hours. Okay, bring it on. I want 5 agents to be up and running in 2 hours, as you promised on your website. So you can start very small, and as soon as it happens, you start to immediately see the benefits. Of what cloud can provide, with all of the APIs that can connect to all your different systems, the different technologies that are out there, like I talked about, for example, the analytics, the different AI, so forth and so on, and how those things start to build traction and driving a better customer experience. What else do we have here? What else should we be?
Yeah, so there's a question here about video. A couple of questions about video, actually. One of them is, why do you think video is key for the contact center, and is this not a challenge for the agent?
Okay, so that's very good. So personally, when I first came into the Lifesize family, my first thought about video was like, oh, this is going to be great for triaging field service calls. So, for example, if my boiler's down, why would I send a truck out when you could have a technician in your pocket that you could pivot to the video and actually be able to, show the customer where you press, this button or that button. But the reality is that if you think about what's happening here, is that you are giving the customer a sense of peace, calm, security, confidence, to be able to address their issue. You're showing that you can trust the customer's ability to support themselves. And now let's take that a step further now to the financial markets out there. With video, the customer now can see the agent can see the customer. And for one thing, there's already been studies that have shown that once the customer and the agent see each other, the whole kind of like the armchair bad person, the armchair griper, the armchair mean customer phenomenon kind of goes down, because when you see the body language of the agent see the customer, they're both like, oh, you're human, I'm human. Let's what's going on here? How can I help you? And so the angst or the tension in the call, so to speak, kind of goes down, and then we get on with the task at hand, which is, okay, let me help you fill out your mortgage paperwork. Let me help you understand like where in the claims process you are, and let me show you here where this needs to be filled out. Or, hey, we think there might have been an error in your application, and for example, so we're going to be like canceling your policy, and the customer's like, no, that can't be. Why are you canceling my policy? But then you can actually show with the customer, look, here's where you said that you never had an accident before, and there's where you ticked it off on the website or on the form that you filled out, and we kind of need to get to the bottom of this and understand exactly what the status is with your past history of driving cars, so that we can get you on a policy that reflects exactly the circumstances that you're in. And if we think about it again, you know, the average age of a agent in the contact center is going to range between, I think they're 22 and 33 years old, with me being about 26, 27. These folks are used to talking on video. This is not like something that we're pushing them into that they're unfamiliar with. I mean, I can understand if we were doing this 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, and you said, hey, let's get Skype. Everybody in our call center is going to be on Skype. I mean, even me, I'd be like, I don't want somebody to see me. And I remember when those video technologies first came out, I was always pretty reluctant to turn on the camera. But now it's just a matter, you know, or as they say in, I guess, golf lingo, par for the course that you do this. So it's not going to be a challenge for the agents. It's a challenge that you're trying to remove for the customer so that they can get to the goal that they have, which is to be able to get something done. And so we have to be able to train our agents to the relationship that they're having with the customer, not the relationship they have to the device or the channel that they're calling in on. Long answer,
right.
but
so the next question.
That's I'm sorry.
No, that's good. No, that's good. That's helpful. And this one, you know, it kind of follows up on that. So I feel like you've partially answered it. But what sort of traction have you seen result from video contact center implementations?
Well, I think, okay, so what kind of traction have you seen as a result? Okay, so I think that what we're seeing is that the most traction that we're getting is with the companies out there that have field operations, because, for example, in the cable business, and this is from my experience in the U.S. as well as here in the U.K., is that when you're running a truck roll or a service call, they can cost anywhere between 60 to 100 pounds per truck roll or per service call. And sometimes, and I've experienced this myself, when somebody gets out there, they're not prepared. They don't know what's wrong with whatever it is that you're looking at. You know, for example, it might be the router, it might be, you know, the boiler or whatever it is that you're having them to come out and fix. But that particular appointment was maybe made 2 days ago. So I'm having to wait 2 days for the technician to come out here. The technician's poking around and they're saying, oh, well, you know, I don't have everything I need. I'll have to come tomorrow. And meanwhile, I'm suffering. When the reality is that if video would have been used in the beginning, then I could have been on the phone with the agent going through, you know, my boiler or my router, or, you know, putting together my IKEA box or whatever it is that I need some visual support on, and then they could then inform the technician that these are the issues that you need to, you know, address. Here are the different parts that you need before you even get out there. I couldn't support the customer. I tried, so you need to get out there. Now, the key here is that what I said, I couldn't fix it for the customer, because we found that on average you can get up to 20% reduction in truck rolls and service calls by allowing the agents to triage the call prior to instigating an appointment to the customer. Now, as far as, you know, the financial industry and, you know, insurances and banking and so forth and so on, you know, an appointment with your banker, you know, how does that happen now? You know, you know, with all of the flux of COVID and the restrictions and all of this craziness that we're going through, you know, do we set up an appointment for you to come into the bank? And how much easier is that done when you have somebody right there available for you on your desktop to take you through some of the most important decisions that you make in your life, you know, putting together wills and estates and you know, doing your taxes and all these other things that really, if you had somebody there with you face to face supporting you on these things, you're going to engender a sense of loyalty and you know, kinship that you normally wouldn't get if you were actually talking on the phone. So the traction is where you're trying to solve complex problems, and the traction is where you're trying to engender trust, is where we're seeing most of the traction on that.
Mm-hmm.
On that. So.
Yeah, definitely kind of humanizes it for sure. Okay, we have time for one last question here, so I'll read it off. How can we start with a cloud migration while reducing risk?
Okay, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. I would strongly suggest that you talk to a cloud provider, and you know, and I'm not going to name one here that I might be working for, that comes and talks to you and does a discovery session. And the discovery session is not about like what do you have now and what do you need now as far as features and functions. As soon as you start to hear somebody rattling off, it does this and it does that and it has this bell and this whistle and that blinking light, you want to stop the conversation. The types of conversations you want to have with your potential cloud, provider is it starts off with what are you trying to do? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What challenges are you having? What are your customers saying? What is your customer satisfaction level? What are your agent satisfaction levels? What's your agent attrition rate? How are your sales? So basically, all of the challenges that you're having with the operation of the business are the questions that you want to be asking. Next thing you do, well, after realizing that this particular cloud provider is interested in your business operations, not just turning on some cool technology that has some bells and whistles, but do they have a succinct plan for migrating you over? Okay, you don't want to hear, oh, it'll just be 6 weeks, as I kind of rattled off earlier. Yes, it might be 6 weeks, but what is that? Is it in stages? And you want to see those stages. So we, for example, have a 5-stage process that you use to get you from A to B, to get you across the street. But make sure that you're interrogating the cloud provider on those stages. What's the discovery session is all about? What is the discovery session all about? What is the session with the IT department as it relates to security, and relates to all the connectors, and relates to the current on-prem system, and what are you going to do with it? How do you upskill the agents, train them? How do you start with 5 agents and then go to 3,000 agents? What's the plan for that? And then post-installation, what's going on as far as the optimization of the technology to make sure that you're getting the most out of it? The last thing you want is somebody to turn it on and then tell you to call them in case there's a service ticket, because they'll get back to you in such and such SLA agreement that you have with them. You want them to be able to actually completely operationally integrate the technology into your entire business, not just the contact center. Because at the end of the day, your contact center is the strategic hub of your business, and so it is critical that migration happens in a manner that is considering your overall business objectives, is done in a kind of milestone fashion, 5, 6, 7 steps that are distinct, that they can completely outline what's going to happen, and the associated timelines with that. And that's how you reduce that risk of migrating to the contact center. I'm sorry, migrating to the cloud.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Valor. This was very informative. And to our audience, thank you as well. Just a reminder, you can catch this entire webinar on demand soon. Just keep an eye out for the email that will be sent out tomorrow. Again, this was Valor Svanson, Global Strategist, Contact Center, CX and EX Consulting at Lifesize. I'm Julie Moon. We hope you have a fantastic end to 2020, and we'll catch you next year. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.